Hey y'all, Zach McDonald, your real estate agent with Real Property Associates. Recently, I was interviewed by King 5 News and had the opportunity to talk a little bit about the housing market in the Seattle area on TV, which was super fun. I called my mom and I told her that I was going to be on the news. And she asked me, well, why are you gonna be on the news? What for? And I told her that I did something really bad and I wanted her to find out before she found out on the news. And she didn't believe me. My own mom didn't believe me, and she was right not to believe me. But back to the point of this video, I think we covered some topics in the interview that I think are important to discuss, some things I've talked about on this channel, and some things maybe I haven't made a specific video about. But the news article and the video ended up being very, very short, as it typically is. People don't want to hear me talk for 30 minutes unless you subscribe to this channel. If you haven't done so, please do. I do have some longer videos, but not that long. So if you are curious, I linked up the article down below. You can go check it out. Again, it's on king5.com, and it was a couple weeks ago. I've also got the link down below to the King County market updates because we do talk about the market on a monthly basis. All right, so in addition to talking about some of the most recent data, and in the data I shared in that video and in that article is the current info as of the beginning of January, so it's kind of the year-end information. It's crazy how King County's home prices are well over $1 million now on average across the county, and specifically most expensive over on the east side of Lake Washington. And that was one of the things that we talked about in the video because I think people want to know how much our house is selling for, what's the competition like. So we touched on that a little bit in the interview, talking about some of the hottest places, again, mainly over on the east side, and why the market is so hot. And we talked about interest rates being low, we talked about the low inventory, and also this idea of fear of missing out, FOMO. And I think right now there is a big fear of missing out in the housing market in this area, and I think it's justified. Home prices continue to climb, interest rates are really low, and people want to be able to purchase with these low interest rates, but also purchase before, well, they miss out. And some people are on the edge of getting priced out of the market, and then there's also plenty of people that are not. So even a few weeks back, I was part of a multiple offer situation. I wish I could say I was the winner with my clients, but really they were hundreds of thousands of dollars off. There were 30 plus offers on this house in Redmond, and it went like 450, 500,000 over asking price, crazy. And it was listed below $1 million. So it wasn't like it was a $2 million house that sold 500,000 over asking price. It was literally like almost 50% over asking price. Absolutely bonkers. And I'm experiencing this and have been experiencing this with clients. And I think there are people that are on the edge of being able to afford the prices, but there are so many people that can pay these prices. That's why the prices are getting pushed up 30, 40, 50% over asking price versus just 5%, 10%. When you see smaller amounts over asking price, that's when I personally am a little bit more concerned when they aren't selling that much over asking price because it shows me there's not as much room for people to continue going up. But when people can make offers that are that much over asking price, that means there's still a lot of room for people to continue paying these prices. So something to keep an eye on for sure. We talked about that in our interview. We also discussed in the interview some of the things that buyers can do right now to start getting themselves set up for success. And I shared a few things. These things did not make the actual article or the final video edit, but I think these are helpful and I want to share them with you. The first of the things that you could be doing is just getting started early. So for me, this is education around how the process works and how your money works in the process. Most people have two main fears, and I've shared this previously when they're buying a house, and those two fears typically are, number one, how the heck do I buy a house, especially when it's this competitive, and then how do I get the money? And those are typically the two big overarching fears and areas where people really want to get education around. And so for me, once you know that fear starts to go away, especially if you have somebody walking through the process with you. For me, this looks like meeting with a real estate professional to do what I call a buyer consultation. We talk about needs and wants, we talk about the home buying process, and it also looks like meeting with a loan officer and going over things like income, assets, and credit so you know what your budget looks like. So the loan officer is going to do essentially a consultation on the financing side and help you understand what you qualify for so that you're able to get started with confidence. We're also in the thick of tax season, and for some, they are going to need taxes from the most recent year to help show more income on their pre-approval and help increase their quote-unquote debt-to-income ratio or decrease it, so to speak. So for some, I think finishing up your taxes is a really big piece of the puzzle, and also getting your personal budget dialed in. For some, they don't know what their money is doing every month. And for me, every single month, I'm tracking my expenses, I have a budget, and I'm tracking how I'm doing, how much I'm saving, how much I'm giving, how much I'm spending. And so if you're not in that situation, I think that's a huge piece. It's getting your taxes figured out, getting your personal budget dialed in, and then you can overlay that with your loan pre-approval to know what that is going to look like and what your expected expenses will be with the new home purchase. And this will help kind of lead into what we call the home search criteria. So you're getting your home search criteria figured out. What is it that you're looking for in a house? And for me, you need to have your budget dialed in too, because it helps you decide what's most important and what you can focus on. For some people, the neighborhood and the location is extremely important, and they might sacrifice on the type of house to be in that specific area. But you also need to know if your budget even fits in that specific area before you start to say, oh, well, I have to buy here. And then it also, at the same time, you are also kind of informing yourself about the different neighborhoods that you are able to purchase in. So not only are you getting to see how picky you get to be with the house, but you're also seeing what neighborhoods that you can fit into. Lastly, as we talk about getting yourself ready to purchase, I shared that looking online and browsing the listings on Zillow or Redfin or any of the other real estate websites, for that matter, is helpful as you start to see how your criteria matches up with your budget, and you get to see examples of what these houses look like. And some people start there. The majority of people actually start looking online with made-up budgets in their locations to get an idea. That might be a little bit ahead of the plan or jumping the gun, so to speak, but I think that is still a helpful thing to do, whether you do it at the beginning or the end. Personally, I like to have all the ducks in a row before I start to spend time searching and going through listings, because otherwise it could be wasted time or wasted brain space. But I know people that will still just browse the listings for fun. So there's not specifically a special order for this, but the order I gave should be helpful if you're wanting to start thinking about buying here in 2022. A couple other thoughts about specifically timing, because people, and even in the interview, we talked about, how long is this going to last? When is the time to buy? And real estate is cyclical and seasonal. It is. And we are currently in a place where home prices are at an all-time high. And what that means is you are paying a premium to buy right now. But I don't have a crystal ball, so I have no clue when and if that's going to change and how drastically that's going to change. And I try to be super straightforward with that on this channel, because a lot of people come for advice and I have opinions and thoughts about it, but at the end of the day, I don't know. And in a traditional year, we're going to see home prices climbing, especially while inventory is really, really low, right? Puts pressure on the few houses that are available. Typically, we see prices climbing up into the spring and early summer, flattening off in the summer, and maybe dipping a little bit in the fall into the winter. We saw a little bit of that last year, but not much, especially now that inventory has been really, really tight since the end of the year. So I'm not sure if that's what's going to happen this year, but typically that happens in a given year. For people though, I typically tell people you want to get started early right now, because you don't know how long it's going to take. Some people are a little more motivated and able to act quicker, and some people have more means, able to be a little more aggressive, or they have a stronger financial situation, and that helps. But there are only so many houses and there are a lot of buyers, and only a few people, and specifically one person, gets each house. So as you're a home buyer, you want to consider that you might want to get started earlier than you thought if you want to be successful purchasing a house in this hot market. As well, I think having a longer time horizon is wise. I mentioned I don't know when this is going to change, and nobody really does. And that's where if you have a longer time horizon, maybe you say 5 to 7 year plan, it's not going to matter as much if there's a little dip in prices or even a bigger dip in prices, to be quite frank, because no cycle is going to last beyond that, or at least none have so far. Even the biggest ones we can think of haven't lasted that long. So I think if you have a longer time horizon, you're going to be setting yourself up for success. And as well, I think getting started when you're able is a big part of it. Because if you're able to do it now and you wait, you might not be able to do it in a year. I've seen people that have almost got themselves priced out, or in some cases, they are priced out right now because of where the home values are. And then at the same time, I've seen people kicking themselves looking back, man, I sure wish I would have been more aggressive earlier on. So I think when you're able to, get started, but have a longer time horizon as you're considering your purchase. One other thing we talked about in the interview, and this one did make the article, were thoughts about how to be successful as a buyer in this market. So we talked about getting prepared and kind of some of the ideas around when this is going to change or if it's going to change and what that might look like. But we also talked about making a successful offer. And I'll link up a video below as well about how to be successful in a hot market, in a seller's market. But really it comes down to a few things: price, terms, and contingencies. And I won't spend a lot of time going into what that means here in this video, so make sure you check out the other video that I mentioned. But price typically is the big thing that a seller is looking for. But they also want to have terms in the contract that are favorable to them, and that might be more earnest money or a specific closing date, or maybe they want to stay in the house for a month or two after closing. They also want to have fewer contingencies or protections in the contract for the buyer. So a contingency allows a buyer to potentially back out or protect themselves in some way, and the seller would prefer to see less of that because they want to be having a sure bet when they choose, especially when they're choosing between multiple offers. So in a normal market, there's a lot of negotiation around all of those different pieces. Sometimes you can get a lower price with better terms or fewer contingencies, and other times you can pay a little higher price but have more favorable terms and contingencies as a buyer. And in a buyer's market, a lot of times you can get all of it. Right now, we find ourselves in arguably one of the hottest, if not the hottest markets that we've ever seen here, and definitely in the country. So what it really means is to be successful as a buyer in this market, you can't really have one but not the other. You really do need to have the best price, the best terms, and the best or fewest contingencies. Because in this market, sellers are choosing between lots of offers, and buyers at this point know. It's not a secret what sellers want. You just have to ask good questions. And then at that point, it comes down to which buyer is able to offer the seller the best package. And occasionally, you can get one thing changed. Maybe you have better contingencies, better terms, and a little better price, a little lower price than somebody else. But the majority of the time, you got to do all three. The market is certainly difficult for buyers right now, and for sellers, it's a dream. And so if you find yourself thinking about selling right now, I'd love to have a conversation with you around what that looks like and how to take advantage of or best utilize your position as a seller in a really hot market. And if you're somebody watching this and you're a buyer and you're thinking, man, I'm a little bit overwhelmed or concerned about my situation or how this is going to look, I'd love to be that resource for you and walk through the steps to help you be a successful buyer.